All right, strap in, everyone. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into something really cool, the Gridcoin GreenPaper. Basically, it's like this plan, this idea for a system that could like totally change, well, maybe revolutionize is a better word, how we think about funding scientific research and cloud computing at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff, honestly. And the Green Paper, it really lays out this vision of a system where everyone, and I mean everyone, benefits, right? Like we're talking scientists, businesses, the entire Gridcoin community.
Okay, so for anyone who maybe just tuned in, can you give us a super quick like elevator pitch on what Gridcoin actually is?
Sure. So Gridcoin is this cryptocurrency, right? And it rewards people for donating their computers processing power to help with, scientific research projects. This is all done through this platform called BOINC.
So basically, like your computer can be this like superhero for science whenever it's, just sitting there not doing anything too demanding.
That's a perfect way to put it. And what's so cool about the Green Paper is, it builds on that idea. And initially, like the early focus was on how to attract all those Ethereum miners who were kind of left hanging when Ethereum, switched things up.
Oh, you mean when they moved from proof of work to that whole proof of stake thing?
Exactly. It's pretty technical to explain the difference, but the gist is that Ethereum, they moved away from the system where miners had to solve all these crazy hard math problems to validate transactions.
Yeah, I kind of remember all that. So like, where does Gridcoin fit into all this?
Well, the Green Paper, it kind of started with the idea of giving those Ethereum miners a new home, a new purpose, right? But the vision, it really expanded beyond just, scooping them up. It's about creating this more robust and, way more sustainable system for the long haul.
Okay, sustainable system. I like the sound of that. But what does it actually mean? Like, what's the core idea here?
So the Green Paper, it proposes this whole new thing, right? They're calling it green listing. Basically, it's where companies can get their computing projects, officially listed on the Gridcoin network. So imagine, like, tons of businesses, right? They can tap into this huge, like, massive network of computers, and instead of having to, build these expensive data centers or rely on those traditional cloud services, they can just access Gridcoin's computing power, the power of all those computers working together, and they can get it for, like, way cheaper.
So it's kind of like the Uber or Airbnb of computing power.
Yeah.
Using resources that would just be sitting there unused otherwise.
Exactly. You got it.
That's a brilliant analogy. Okay, so businesses get this, like super affordable computing power. But what about the scientists, right? And what about the whole Gridcoin network itself? What do they get out of this deal?
All right, so picture this, right? Businesses, they start using Gridcoin, to pay for all these computations they're doing. Well, guess what? That drives up the demand for the currency, for Gridcoin itself. So when that happens, the currency gets stronger, right? More stable. And that benefits literally everyone who's holding it, including all those scientists who are like, busting their brains doing all this important research. Suddenly, like, their work has even more impact.
So it's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
You know it. Plus, on top of all that, you've got the Gridcoin Foundation, right? They're the ones who, like, support the whole network, make sure it runs smoothly. Well, they would start getting revenue, right? Like, from all these companies who are lining up to get on that green list, to get access to all that sweet, sweet computing power. And then, that money goes right back into developing the network, supporting it, making it even better.
Sounds awesome. But hold on a sec. Here's a thought that just popped into my head. Wouldn't all these businesses, with their deep pockets and everything, just end up, like, hogging all the resources on the network?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't they just crowd out all the scientific projects?
That's a totally valid question. And to be honest, it's something a lot of people have, wondered about. But the Green Paper, it actually tackles this head on. It talks about how, first of all, the potential computing power on this network, it's absolutely massive.
Right.
Like, we're not talking about a tiny little pie where everyone's fighting over crumbs. This is like a gigantic pie ever expanding. And then, the second thing is, businesses, well, they're all about getting the best deal possible, right? Like,
Yeah.
They're not going to just like throw money around and overpay for computing power if they don't have to. They're going to shop around, find the best price, and that creates, a natural sort of balance.
Okay, so there's like this built-in balance to the system.
Right. And get this, the community, they've actually thought of some like extra safeguards too. Like there's this idea in the Green Paper that the community, they could actually revoke a company's green list status, right? Like kick them off the list if they start acting shady, like if they try to hog all the resources or, create problems for everyone else. So it's like There's this whole system in place to keep things fair for the scientists, to make sure the science doesn't get left behind.
That's really reassuring, honestly. But here's another thought, right? Are there any types of projects that might not be a good fit for Gridcoin? Like maybe some projects are just, I don't know, better suited for those traditional systems.
That's a really sharp observation. And to be totally honest, the Green Paper, it does acknowledge that BOINC, the platform that Gridcoin is built on top of, it might not be perfect for every single project out there. For example, if you have a project that needs like super, super tight security, data security and privacy are like top priority, then BOINC might not be the ideal choice.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And then another thing is that BOINC, it's generally better suited for these, long-term research projects. Like if you have something that needs to run for months or even years, that's where BOINC really shines. But if you need something, super quick, like a short-term task that just needs a burst of computing power, BOINC might not be the most efficient way to go.
Interesting. So it's not like, a one-size-fits-all kind of solution.
But the Green Paper, it actually gives some really cool examples of, potential green list candidates like companies and projects that could really thrive on Gridcoin. And one that really jumps out is Numerai. They're a hedge fund, right? And they use this super sophisticated stuff called machine learning to
Yeah.
try to predict, what's going to happen in the stock market.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of them. They're like already pretty involved in the whole cryptocurrency world, right? So I guess they'd be pretty comfortable working with Gridcoin.
You got it. And, just think about it, right? Imagine the potential boost to their machine learning models if they had access to grid coins. Like insane computing power. They could run way more simulations, analyze way more data. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
Speaking of mind-blowing potential, the Green Paper, it mentions this other possible candidate that I thought was super interesting, a power company.
Yeah.
Like an actual power company getting in on the action. I got to admit, that one really caught my eye.
I know, right? That's where things get really, really interesting. So, imagine this, okay. A power company, they start accepting Gridcoin as, payment for electricity. Talk about closing the loop, right? You've got businesses. They're using Gridcoin to pay for all their computing needs. Then they turn around and pay for the electricity that's powering those computers with Gridcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that, the whole cycle, it helps to fund the scientific research that's happening on the network.
Whoa. It's like this self-sustaining ecosystem just humming along, powering itself, and scientific discovery at the same time. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that, a decentralized, community-driven network like Gridcoin could actually have this much impact, right? Like on scientific research, A&D, cloud computing. It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. It's a bold vision, that's for sure. But with any new idea, there are always challenges. And the Green Paper, it's honest about that. It talks about, how somebody could theoretically copy the whole concept of Gridcoin, but without, the whole scientific research part. Like they could just create a network that's, all about offering cheaper and faster computing power, but without the, I guess you could say, the noble aspect of supporting science.
So it's like they could undercut Gridcoin by being less ethical. I mean, is that too strong of a word?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a tension, right? Like the age-old tension between doing good and, just making a profit. But the Green Paper, it does point out that Gridcoin, it has a couple of big advantages here. First, it's got this existing network of computers, right? Like all these people who are already contributing their computing power. And then the second thing is that it was the first one out there, the first to really bring this whole idea to life. And in the world of technology, being first, it gives you a pretty big head start.
So it's kind of like any new technology, right? Being the first to market, that gives you an edge.
Yeah.
But you got to keep innovating, keep evolving to stay ahead of the game.
You got it. And that's actually, that's why the Green Paper is so important. It's not just some theoretical document gathering dust on a shelf. It's like a call to action, right? Like it's saying to the Gridcoin community, hey, look, we've got this incredible thing going here, but we can't just sit back and relax. We got to keep pushing the boundaries, keep making things better, and build a platform that's both sustainable and impactful.
So basically, the future of Gridcoin, it hinges on the community's ability to adapt and innovate.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it for sure. And that's why, that whole power company partnership idea, it's so fascinating. If they could pull that off, if they could make a deal like that happen, it would be like, massive validation, right? It
Right.
would show the world that the green paper's vision, that it's not just a pipe dream, it's something real, something tangible.
It'd be a huge signal to the rest of the world like, hey, look, this whole Gridcoin thing, it's the real deal. Get on board.
You got it. And, even beyond the whole economics of it, the potential for profit and all that, there's something just really inspiring about this whole idea, right? Like, you've got this community of people, they're coming together, they're using technology to do something good, something that could benefit everyone. I mean, that's a story worth telling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what if Gridcoin actually achieves even a fraction of what the green paper lays out? What kind of world could we create? Like, imagine a world where scientific funding is more accessible, where anyone with a computer can contribute to solving, the world's biggest challenges, and where computing power, well, it's just more affordable for everyone. That's a pretty awesome future to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely a compelling vision. And while there are definitely hurdles to overcome, challenges to face, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited to see what the future holds for Gridcoin. There's a lot of potential here.
Me too. And that's a perfect place to keep this conversation going. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be diving even deeper into the Gridcoin green paper. Stay tuned.
Can't wait. So before we got a little carried away there, dreaming about all the amazing things Gridcoin could do, we were talking about those potential green list candidates, those companies that could really benefit from this whole system. And I gotta say, that power company idea, it's still stuck in my head.
Mine too. It's just, I don't know, it's such an elegant solution, right?
Yeah.
Using Gridcoin to literally pay for the electricity that's powering the computers that are earning Gridcoin. It's like it all just fits together perfectly.
It would be like the ultimate proof of concept, right? A real world demonstration of how this self-sustaining ecosystem could actually work. But maybe we should back up a little bit, before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Like, what about some of the more practical aspects of all this?
Yeah, good point. Let's talk about, how this could actually work in practice. What about that hedge fund we were talking about, Numerai? They seem like, I don't know, a natural fit for this whole thing.
Oh, yeah, Numerai. They're already doing some really cool stuff with, like, distributed computing. They've got this whole network of data scientists all over the world who are, contributing to their machine learning models. So it's not hard to imagine them integrating Gridcoin into that workflow, right?
So instead of just relying on, those big centralized cloud computing platforms, they could tap into Gridcoin's decentralized network and get access to all that distributed computing power.
Exactly. And, it could potentially save them a ton of money in the process. Though, to be fair, the Green Paper does point out that Gridcoin, at least in its current form, it might not be quite ready for those, like, truly massive AI projects, the ones that are using those gigantic language models, the ones that everyone's talking about these
Oh,
days.
yeah, like those models that can, write poetry and code and hold conversations that are like almost a little too human. Those ones.
That's the ones that need like a ridiculous amount of computing power to even function. And the Green Paper, it basically says that the BOANC infrastructure, the platform that Gridcoin is built on, it's just not really designed for that kind of, I don't know, intense, high bandwidth communication that those massive models require.
It's like trying to, I don't know, fit an elephant through a cat door. It's just not going to work.
Love the analogy.
No.
But, even with those limitations, the potential for Gridcoin to become a real player in the world of, AI and machine learning, it's still huge, especially for companies like Numerai, who are already comfortable working with decentralized systems and, embracing new technologies.
So you're saying it's not really a question of if Gridcoin becomes a major force in, scientific computing and cloud computing. It's more a question of when.
Whoa, 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 slow down there. Let's not get too carried away. The Green Paper, it's very clear that there are still, potential challenges and roadblocks along the way. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Okay, fair enough. Let's put on our skeptical hats for a minute. What are some of the things that could, derail this whole thing? What could go wrong?
Well, one concern that the Green Paper raises is that, somebody could just come along and copy the core concept of Gridcoin, but without the whole commitment to scientific research. Like, imagine a network that just pops up and says, hey, we offer cheaper, faster computing power than Gridcoin, and we don't have the overhead of, rewarding scientists.
So basically, they could undercut Gridcoin by being less noble. I mean, is that the right word?
I think noble is a good word for it. It's like, there's this inherent goodness baked into the DNA of Gridcoin. It's about supporting science. It's about using technology for the greater good. But yeah, somebody could come along and just focus on the profit motive, strip out the altruism, and try to compete on price alone.
It's the age-old tension,
Yeah.
right? Doing good versus making a buck.
Exactly. And the green paper, it acknowledges this risk, but it also points out that Gridcoin has, a couple of key advantages. First of all, it's got this existing network, right? Like all these people who are already donating their computing power to support scientific research.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that, it was the first one out there. It pioneered this whole idea. And in the world of technology, that first mover advantage, it can be really powerful.
So it's like, yeah, somebody could try to copy Gridcoin, but they'd be starting from scratch. They wouldn't have that built-in community, that momentum that Gridcoin already has.
Exactly. And that's why, that's why the green paper is so important. It's not just about, laying out a vision for the future. It's about galvanizing community, right? It's about saying, hey, we've got something special here, but we need to keep pushing, keep innovating, keep building on what we've started.
So the future of Gridcoin, it really hinges on the community's ability to, like, adapt, innovate, and stay ahead of the curve.
That's a big part of it for sure. And that's why, that whole power company partnership idea, it's so intriguing. If they could pull that off, it would be like a huge shot in the arm for the whole project, right? It would show the world that the Green Paper's vision, it's not just a bunch of theory. It's something that can actually be put into practice.
It would really showcase the potential of Gridcoin to create this, self-sustaining ecosystem where science and technology and economics, they all work together in harmony.
Absolutely. But even beyond, the economic benefits, there's something just inherently inspiring about this whole idea, right? Like you've got this community of people, they're coming together, they're using their computers to power scientific research, to help solve the world's biggest challenges. I mean, that's a story worth telling, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what if Gridcoin can actually achieve, even a fraction of what the Green Paper lays out? What kind of world could we create? Like, imagine a world where scientific funding is more accessible, where computing power is more affordable, where anyone with a computer can contribute to making the world a better place. That's a pretty awesome future to think about.
It's a compelling vision. And while there are definitely, hurdles to overcome, challenges to face, I gotta admit, I'm pretty excited to see what the future holds for Gridcoin. There's a lot of potential here.
Me too. This has been like an incredible deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
Yeah, it's like we're getting this glimpse into a future where, scientific progress isn't held back by those old school funding models.
It's a future where innovation, it can come from anywhere, right? Like it can be sparked by anyone with a good idea and a computer. And it's all fueled by this like global network of people who, they just believe in the power of science to make the world a better place. And the key to all this, it seems like, is creating this self-sustaining ecosystem, right? The kind that the Green Paper lays out. But do you really think it's feasible? Like, could it actually work in the real world?
Well, the Green Paper, it's not just some vague idealistic document. It actually gets into the nuts and bolts, the nitty-gritty details of how this system could actually function. Like, they talk about the mechanisms for green listing projects, how to make sure that businesses don't just come in and, monopolize everything. They talk about the safeguards, the potential partnerships. It's all there laid out in pretty clear terms.
And what I really like about it is like, it aligns everyone's incentives, right? Like businesses get what they want, which is affordable computing power. Scientists get more resources to do their research. And the Gridcoin community, well, they benefit from a stronger, more stable currency. Everybody wins.
Exactly. It's a classic win-win-win scenario. And it all comes back to this one simple yet super powerful idea, right?
Yeah.
Using all that computing power that's just sitting there unused and putting it to work to fuel scientific discovery.
It's like, taking those idle minutes when your computer's just like humming along, not doing anything too demanding, and turning them into something truly meaningful.
You got it. It's about harnessing the collective power of like a global network of computers and using that power for the greater good.
So if you had to sum it all up, what's the one big takeaway you'd want our listeners to walk away with today?
I think the Gridcoin green paper is a really powerful example of how technology, it can be used to solve real-world problems and in a way that benefits everyone involved. It's a vision that's definitely worth exploring, a conversation worth having, and who knows, maybe it'll inspire some people to get involved and help make this vision a reality.
I love that. To all our listeners out there, we highly encourage you to check out the Gridcoin Green Paper for yourself. It's a really fascinating read, and it just might spark your imagination about what the future of science and technology could look like. And hey, maybe you'll even be inspired to join the Gridcoin community and be a part of building this incredible future.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.